Hey everyone, I know it's been a while and I'll probably do an update video talking about general life stuff if you're interested in that kind of thing. So I don't know when I'll get around to it, and that's just the way things are these days. Really busy, but yeah, if you're interested in that, there will be a follow-up video. But today's video, I want to keep it on the topic of Atlas. And when I say Atlas, I would say 99.999999% of people, when you think of Atlas holding up the world, well, that's already wrong. Atlas never held up the world, but that's the imagery that we think of when we think of Atlas. And it's all tied in with the ball earth deception that they get us to think that. It's actually quite ingenious how they do a lot of these things. And the globe is obviously a symbol, one of the most strong symbols of brainwashing that they use. So how fitting that every time we think of Atlas, we get that globe reinforcement, even though Atlas never held up a ball earth. And that's the gist of this video right there. So I'll go through the slides, and there was a lot of interesting things when I was looking through this. But yeah, of course, what made me think about this is I made a comment about Atlas holding up the world, but then I just instantly thought, wait, Atlas can't hold up the world like a ball, because there was no way that the ancient Greeks were thinking that there was a ball earth. So I just had that thought. And then I went and looked at Atlas, and right there in plain day, this is just another one of those instances where if you look into it, the truth is there. They'll hand you the truth if you're looking for it. Sometimes it's there, but you have to go looking for it, and it's hidden behind the veil of deception propaganda that is fed to the 99%. The 99%, all you see is Atlas holding up a ball earth. But then when you go and look at the source and start looking at Atlas, oh no, it was the celestial spheres. It had to do with the heavens. Atlas held up the heavens, the sky. So here's one example and another example. I think it's interesting too how it's clearly not like a sphere shape going on there at the bottom. And yeah, once again, I've kind of said a lot already, because I already think look at the two columns here too, very interesting. I already think that that's a lot of information and really important, that the Atlas figure, who is supposed to be holding up the heavens, or the celestial spheres, somehow gets turned into using the globe symbol and being directly linked with that globe imagery, even though he never was associated with that in the beginning. That it's just so their MO to do something like that. Take something historical, twist it into something that's just a lie, and then plaster that one, do a million posters of that everywhere, and get that to be the thing that people think of. They run that same operation over and over and over. This was a pretty cool one. The bearer of the heavens. Atlas never held up the earth. And that's the major point. It got turned into something else. And how it got turned into something else is actually kind of interesting. So that's where most of the words and stuff, I'm still going to try to keep this really short, because that's it. I've already said it. Everybody should know Atlas never held up a ball earth. He's holding up the heavens. But what's this? And it's because he's not holding up a ball earth. It's hard to depict, and you saw those depictions. They're kind of clunky looking when you show somebody holding up the heavens. So of course, Atlas holding up a ball, it was holding up a representation of the heavens. And so it never was a ball earth that Atlas was holding up. It was a representation of the celestial sphere, and it was a celestial globe. And celestial globes, in and of themselves, are a great topic for if you're into flat Earth, because It's so interesting. I'll try to give my summary of what I think is going on, and then I'll flip through the relevant slides and let you make your own decision. There's a really interesting thing about celestial spheres, ones like this. Today they'll tell you, oh, it's backwards. The sphere is what do you call those? The character? Why is my mind blanking? You know how they group stars together and give them a name? Anyways, it'll come back to me. They try to tell you today that they're mirrored, that it's like backwards. And that is wrong. Just what it is that today we think of them as being backwards. What's going on is they used to depict the celestial spheres from God's perspective, from being zoomed out beyond the stars and looking in towards the stars. So the earth would be in the middle of this. And no, not as a ball. But anyways, that's the issue, is that people today assume that stars are infinitely far away, more or less, and spaced all apart from one another, far from one another, when in reality, the night really is a starry dome, and it's much better to think of the stars as fixed objects all stuck to a sphere. Is a much better representation of reality. And thusly, you can zoom out beyond that, and then you're looking back in at stars. I don't know if that made any sense to people. Let's keep going. Celestial globes show the apparent position of stars in the sky. And then this is where, I mean, I think all of us have seen those like spheres nestled in spheres, astroglobe type objects. That's because the planets and the sun and the moon have their own special ones. And the sun and the moon actually have like tracks that they go on if you follow Enoch. Look at the craftsmanship though. So this is just another important thing. You know how globes are like the it symbol for the modern day Illuminati? They took the celestial sphere and turned it into a deception. The celestial spheres were actually like a useful object. Nobody can navigate on a globe. That's just a corrupted version of something that actually used to serve a purpose and was scientific. Look at how advanced this is compared to some crappy globe. You can't do anything with the globe. Nobody can navigate with the globe. It's a objet d'art. It's a piece of art, and it's a representation of an idea, but it's not a useful tool. Whereas these are useful tools and better pieces of art too. There's an issue. So I kind of tried to give my gist on it earlier, that it's about perspective. Today, when we look at a celestial sphere, you might be thinking, well, they're showing the stars how I'm going to see them up in the sky. But that's not right. That's backwards. The celestial spheres were constructed knowing that the stars are fixed to a sphere, and they're put on there from the perspective of being zoomed out beyond that sphere and looking in at the stars. So that's why that's where they get into this idea of handedness, and they try to say, oh, all those old ones were wrong. How could somebody making something like this be wrong and doing something wrong? Okay, nothing is wrong about this. They knew something else. They knew that it was a celestial sphere, and they knew that it was drawn from the perspective of being zoomed out beyond that sphere, and that if you want to see what it looks like from the sky, you need to imagine yourself being inside of that sphere, looking out. So that's what this is all about, I believe. Pause, read it, let me know if I'm wrong in the comments, if I'm not interpreting this correctly. But I believe that's what all of this is about. So it's not an inconsistency, it's about your perspective. And today, with the today with the sun center perspective, it doesn't make any sense. But if you understand that in the times, nobody believed in ball earth or any of that stuff. They knew earth was flat and that there was a celestial sphere. This was just kind of interesting. Well, one thing you can do is make it transparent so that you can look through it. But I mean, people were just smarter back then. They knew how to handle it without having to make things for, easy. Explain like I-5. They clearly were very advanced. I'm gonna really quickly read through these. There's probably some stuff in here that was interesting. I know that there is some interesting stuff. I like how they try to downplay they always try to downplay the past, but look at how advanced those celestial globes are. They look super advanced. They don't look like a play toy. Like today's globes are a play toy. You cannot navigate using a globe. That's a toy. Every globe out there is literally a toy. These celestial spheres look like real astronomical devices. This was really cool. I want to read this start to finish. Because astronomical objects are at such remote distances, casual observation of the sky offers no information on their actual distances. All celestial objects seem equally far away, as if fixed onto the inside of a sphere with a large but unknown radius, which appears to rotate westward overhead. Meanwhile, Earth underfoot seems to remain still. This is exactly how we observe reality every day of our life. And that's why flat Earth is the truth. Occam's razor. It really, it's the way that we observe it every day. They were on to something, and all of this globe stuff is just a bunch of BS cartoons. There was something really cool. I don't know if I got the... Excuse me while I flip through sides. I don't know if I got it. Maybe this is worth a follow-up video, or maybe this is just bonus for people that go and do some research on their own. See, I think I was researching this another time and I didn't quite take the slides. Sorry for all the slide flipping. I'll just try to paraphrase based off my memory, so who knows. But I was reading people's ancient descriptions of the celestial spheres and the heavens, and people were talking about how the stars are like openings in the celestial sphere, and there was a lot of talk of wheels. And the old talk of chariots, wheel in the sky, keep on turning. The sun, it rotates, and the moon, they rotate like a wheel. Like looking at a chariot wheel head on, and it spins. The sun and the moon do that in the sky. And there were people talking about gears and but yeah, I mean the sky, it does look like there's a sphere around us with like holes poked in it. But yeah, God, think of, and anything that man can do, God can do greater, obviously. And it's like the heavens, or like think of the finest made Swiss watch, and God's version of that are the celestial heavens with these massive spheres and rotating gears, and probably involving all sorts of interesting electromagnetism, physics, and gemstones, and who knows. I thought these diagrams were really cool. Dante and Beatrice gaze upon the highest heaven. Look at this. Just compare this to what we got today. That is incredible. What was happening in 1594 that they were creating things like this? The little dials, everything, it looks so precise. This looks like something that you could actually use to do science on, as opposed to a globe of today, which is nothing but a toy. Literally nobody in the history of ever has navigated using a globe. This was really cool. I thought this was cool. So I think whatever article this was, it was kind of weird looking through the articles on celestial globes. Some late medieval figures noticed that the celestial spheres' physical order was inverse to their order on the spiritual plane. I thought this was really a cool thought that somebody had. I'm sure we all have heard seventh heaven, things like that. That's thinking of the different layers of these spheres. And somebody had the thought thinking, I love this because it's this type of really easy thought that everybody should have, but until somebody points it out, you're like, oh, I didn't think of that. Because normally, from the human perspective, you'd be like, oh, we have the sun and the moon really close to us, and then you got the things behind them, the stars, and then you got more stars that are farther away. And we tend to things of, let's say, Pluto. We tend to think of things like Pluto as being insignificant. But somebody flipped it and said, well, the most distant, the stars in the most distant sphere are the ones closest to God in heaven. So doesn't that serve some sort of importance? I just thought that was a really cool thought that somebody had way back in the 1300s. And this was in a part talking about how a lot of people think of the spheres as pointing down towards us, but somebody flipped it and thought of them, well, maybe the celestial spheres are pointed up towards God, like this, with the concavity that way. I thought that was really interesting. Well, I think I've gone through everything. I hope you enjoyed this video. I always do aspire to keep making videos, but you know, life happens. But I'm always around. I'm always thinking about you guys, and I appreciate you guys so much. Very thankful. You know, great time to be thankful. And thankful to God for this channel, honestly. It's a huge blessing, and yeah, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. God bless everyone.